Many of these Chinese American women had opportunities in small towns because they were exposed to larger community. But one of the most famous in this period of the 1920s and 30s was Missy Gue Gim of Pioche, Nevada. And Missy was born in Hong Kong, so she's one of the first generation women that I've talked about. And she was born in Hong Kong in 1900. And in 1912, her father came to pick her up and take her to San Francisco, where he had a shop, a hardware store in Chinatown, because her mother had died. And he had remarried a woman in Hong Kong and brought her over with Gue Gim. And Gue Gim, or Missy went through Angel Island, and she said it was very frightening because her father was separated from her and her brothers were separated from her, and she was in the women's only section. And when they started asking her questions, to see if she should be admitted, she was afraid to answer. She was just petrified. And they looked at her and they said, "Oh, well, you look just like your father," which may not have been a good thing, but you look just like your father, and so we'll let you in. And so she got in with answering very few of the interrogation questions that they had in Angel Island. Then in 1916, her father said to her, "Gue Gim, I found a husband for you. He might be a lot older than you are, like 20 or 30 years, but don't worry about that. You'll like him. He owns a restaurant in Castleton near Pioche, Nevada." First she said, "Nevada? Castleton? Pioche? What are these towns?" I mean, she was in San Francisco living the urban lifestyle. And so she married this man because her father had said she had to. And this was, of course, the tradition in China that you marry whomever your parents pick out for you. And I keep trying to, influence people to do that, but they don't agree with that. Anyway, so she married this man. They went to Pioche or Castleton, where he had his restaurant, for the mine. And the people in the area said, "Oh, she doesn't speak any English. We need to give her an education." And so they persuaded her husband to enroll her in the one-room schoolhouse in Prince, Nevada. And so she attended school as the oldest child in that one-room schoolhouse. And the teacher very wisely said, "Well, we have to learn about China, the place where our new student comes from." So they put on a story and a play and a historical background to China, invited the whole community who turned out for this play so that everyone now knew about China, and Missy felt very comfortable in the atmosphere, and she passed 3 grades in one year and 3 grades in another year, and eventually graduated from the one-room schoolhouse. And her husband said, "Well, you stay at home now that you've graduated, but maybe we should go to Hong Kong for a visit, and you can see where you came from because it was so long ago." So they packed up and went supposedly for a year back to Hong Kong. And while they were there, a woman gave her a little boy and said, "Here, will you take care of my little boy?" And so she and her husband went through the adoption process in China to adopt this little boy. And then when they tried to come back to the United States with the young man, they were not able to do so. So they turned the child over to a relative to raise. And she came back with Tom, who in 1933 passed away. So she took over the restaurant, and she kept trying to bring her adopted son over without any luck. And eventually, of course, he grew up, married, and had a daughter. And she was able, with the help of Senator McCarran, to bring that granddaughter, adopted granddaughter, over to the United States and educate her in the Castleton, Pioche area, and even got her a scholarship to college. And eventually the young lady married a young man that she met in San Francisco, and they reside in San Francisco. Well, Missy went on in the 1930s to feed Herbert Hoover, who was a part owner of the Castleton mine. And whenever he was in the western United States, he went to Missy Wa's cafe to eat. And so I asked her, "Well, Missy Wa, did he really like Chinese food?" Because, of course, everyone knows that Herbert Hoover was an engineer in China. And she said, No. He liked my steak apple pie." which she made in a wood-burning stove. Okay, and it took a long time before Pioche got electrification and had a real stove like we have, gas stove and things like that. Anyway, so she was very close to Herbert Hoover, met him a lot of times, and for that reason she became well known in the community and in that whole area of Nevada. And a lot of people from Las Vegas used to eat at Missy Cafe, and so I went up to eat a couple of times there, and it was amazing. She was a wonderful cook, and she would buy her groceries from the local grocerman, or she came down to Las Vegas and got groceries, and she went to Cedar City and got groceries. But her real secret, I asked her, what is the secret of your cooking? And she said, I grow some of my own vegetables and herbs, and I mix them in with the canned vegetables or the frozen vegetables, so that they have a better taste. And the herbs were, of course, very important in her cooking, and she grew onions and things like that, So you had carrots and onions and so forth in her food from her garden in the restaurant. And she died in 1988, and one of the things that she had told me when she was getting older was that she wanted to be buried in Pioche. And so the community in Pioche buried her in the local cemetery, which I'm sure made her very happy.